Hello and welcome to the Ruslan Belov channel. Today, an enormous number of very interesting events have taken place, so let's get started. Watch the video until the end. It's going to be very interesting. We've just received fresh data on the number of deserters from the front over the past month, and the numbers are shocking. So in June, 17,082 soldiers abandoned their positions and fled from the front lines. In total, during 2025, 107,672 people have deserted. Of them, only 1,807 soldiers were returned to their units. That's just 1.7%. Since the beginning of the special military operation, 230,804 individuals have chosen to flee rather than die for the Zelensky regime. Now we move on to the front line. We'll begin with the Sumy sector, where intense battles continue between the Russian army and the Ukrainian armed forces. There are two hotspots in this area. The first one, as usual these days, is the settlement of Kondratovka. Let me remind you that 3 days ago, the Ukrainian side launched an offensive. Ahead of the possible third round of negotiations between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, the attack came, so to speak, from the direction of Novokonstantinovka, pushing through the north of Kondratovka, aiming to reach its northeastern outskirts to cut off Russian units from their supply lines. Over the past few days, we've seen multiple updates. Today, another one appeared, provided by various neutral cartographers. According to the latest reports, by the evening of July 9th, the Ukrainian side possibly controls at least 50% of the settlement. Based on the current front configuration, it's possible that Russian units in the southern and central parts of Kondratovka have fallen into tactical encirclement. At the same time, we're seeing that Ukraine is increasing pressure from the Andreevka direction, clearly aiming to form a cauldron and trap Russian forces. The Russian side has released footage from objective control drones showing strikes on forward Ukrainian positions, possibly targeting assault units trying to push north to seal the encirclement from the south and southeast. However, the encirclement hasn't occurred yet, and may not happen at all, as Russia is likely to launch countermeasures in the coming hours, possibly even now, by redeploying reinforcements to stabilize the front line. But one thing is clear. Right before the third round of negotiations, Zelensky and Zelensky are trying to improve their bargaining position any way they can. Meanwhile, reports have come in today that Russian forces crossed the border near the settlement of Garnal and began slowly advancing through forests, tree lines, and open fields toward Magritsa. This information has been confirmed by multiple neutral OSINT sources, and also by various pro-Russian experts. This is how the map has been adjusted over the past few days. Many cartographers noted similar changes even yesterday, by the end of July 8th. Today, slight corrections are already being published. We'll keep watching to see whether the Russian army continues to advance in this area. Next, we move on to the Kupiansk direction. Today, just a few words about the town of Kupiansk. Last week, the Russian Ministry of Defense surprised everyone with a report claiming to have cleared the settlement of Sobolevka, located west of Kupiansk. Several days have passed, and no confirmed evidence has emerged to support this alleged breakthrough. However, if you follow various pro-Russian experts and cartographers, some of the more reliable ones, like Lost Armor for example, they are gradually beginning to mark territory northwest and west of Kupiansk. As of now, some experts have begun updating maps near the settlement of Mirovaya, also known historically as Moskovika. Next, we head to the southern Kupiansk sector, which has provided the most interesting updates today. For the past several days, Russian forces have been carrying out intense offensive operations, and Ukraine has attempted counterattacks near Redkadub. Now debates are underway. What is really happening in Redkadub? Let me remind you that several days ago, some pro-Russian analysts reported that Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade had conducted a series of successful counterattacks, regaining nearly full control of Redkadub. At the same time, there are reports of Russian advances, including the near-total clearing of Glushenkovo, as well as ongoing combat in the area of Novy Mir. So we're seeing conflicting information about the northern flank. We'll have to wait and see how things develop. Meanwhile, a dispute has broken out among experts, yet many sources, including those close to the ground, are now insisting that the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Redkadub is false information and that the entire settlement remains under Russian control. It's possible that some northwestern parts are in a grey zone, but the northern axis isn't the most critical one right now. The most significant news today is coming from the Lyman sector. Today, the pro-Ukrainian deep state team updated their map with major changes in the direction of Chandrigalovaya. Most notably, today they also marked the village of Zelenaya Dolina as being completely and confidently controlled by the Russian armed forces. Let's take a look at how the map has been adjusted. This is a situation we could already observe yesterday. By the end of July 8th, new information emerged about advances. As you can see from the updates, Russian forces have fully taken the settlement of Zelenaya Dolina and from there have advanced toward the Nitrius River, effectively putting potential Ukrainian armed forces positions in a pocket between the settlements of Karpovka, Zelenaya Dolina, and Chandrigalova. The pace of the offensive here is quite high based on the map corrections, and there's a strong chance that within a week, Russian units will approach the settlement of Chandrigalova, and combat will begin for this small village. Though, compared to Zelenaya Dolina, Novaya, and Red Kodub, it's actually a larger village, which could allow Russian forces to consolidate and prepare for further assaults toward Novosilovka, Derilovo, and Dobryshevo. Next, we move to the Seversk sector of the front. The situation here resembles what's happening around Lyman and Red Kodub. Again, debates are ongoing, and a number of fairly reliable experts have issued denials, claiming that Russian forces are nowhere near the northeastern part of Seversk. Combat is still ongoing between Verkhnekamenskoye and Seversk. However, the initial reports didn't claim that Russian forces had reached Seversk itself, but rather that some special recon units might have probed the northeastern outskirts. In any case, we have footage from objective control drones showing artillery and FPV drone strikes in this area, which according to some experts is already under Russian control. But clearly fighting here is ongoing and will likely continue for several weeks in this tug of war. Next, we move to the Konstantinovka section. Here, serious combat operations are taking place. Russian forces are gradually transitioning to the final phase of the offensive near the Klebenbyk Reservoir, as well as in the area along the Seversky-Donets-Donbass Canal. Minor updates are being made near Belaya Gora, and there's high activity by Russian artillery and FPV drones in Kishka, along the Krivoy Torets River and the Novgorodskoye-Konstantinovka railway line. We're seeing a large number of strikes. Pro-Ukrainian sources report that Russian forces are intensifying operations along this corridor. The main fighting is now for the settlements of Shcherbenovka and Novospaskaya or Leonidovka. Russian forces aim to cut off a smaller pocket, essentially a pocket within the larger Klebenbyk area. Capturing this will allow them to straighten and shorten the front line, freeing up units to focus on battles for Katerinovka and Klebenbyk. At the same time, Russia is trying to push toward the T-0516 road and then on to the T-0522, aiming to capture key strongholds. Ukrainian sources are publishing footage of strikes on Russian assault troops nearing this defensive line. If Ukraine loses this position, Russian forces will be able to close the distance to the Klebenbyk Reservoir, increasing losses for the Ukrainian armed forces in case of a retreat along the T-0522 toward Konstantinovka. The situation indicates that Russia is approaching the final phase of operations here, and a northeastern encirclement could soon be completed. Next, we follow the H-32 highway. Fighting continues near Novoekonomichny. 4 days ago, Russian troops conducted a successful assault, landing forces near Novoekonomichny and establishing positions. Since then, there's been radio silence, no news about whether they've advanced or what's happening there. Complete silence. The only known activity is the gradual clearing of the pocket east and southeast of the area. Over the past day, the map was updated. West of Miranoye, along Stepnaya Street, Russian troops reportedly cleared territory. They also reportedly cleared the pocket between Malinovka, Elizavetovka, and Novotoretskoye. These updates are based solely on cartographers' data, without geolocated confirmation, but they appear logical. The goal is to flatten this pocket to approach Novoekonomichny from all sides, south, southeast, east, and northeast, and then storm it from multiple directions. Regardless of how fast this proceeds, it's crucial for Russian forces to maintain a foothold in southern Novoekonomichny despite any difficulties. Now we move to the Dnipropetrovsk direction. Today's main updates come from the village of Tolstoy. Since morning, Russian sources and the Vostok troop group have released footage of the clearing operation there. In a 1-minute 42-second video, we see Ukrainian forces rapidly retreating. Russian forces took 2 to 5 days to secure the village. Ukrainian troops are unable to withdraw or form new defensive lines in time. Russian aviation and drones are constantly striking and disrupting logistics. Based on the Vostok Group's footage, map updates were made. This is the second Ukrainian settlement on the Mokrye Yali River to fall under Russian control in this area. Previously, Podubnoye was marked, and now Tolstoy. By evening, reports indicate Russian forces entered the village of Mirnoye, with 25 to 30% under Russian control. Tonight, Ukrainian forces will likely retreat westward through the fields toward Alexandrogorod or Voskresenka. There's a 70 to 80% chance that Mirnoye will be fully marked as under Russian control by tomorrow. The front line will stabilize, and Russian forces will start concentrating toward Voskresenka and north of Tolstoy, toward Novoakhtadskoye, Zeleny Gai, and Andreevka Klevtsovo. Next, we head to the Gulyai-Pol sector. Here, map updates are frequent but unstable, similar to what we've seen in Seversk and Podubnoye. Sometimes areas are marked as captured, then reversed. It's unclear whether this is manipulation or actual back-and-forth fighting. Today, another update came in. The southern and central parts of Malinovka were marked under Russian control. This is confirmed by many sources. After clearing Malinovka, Russian forces seem to have shifted their vector from northward, toward Poltavka, to westward, toward Zeleny Gai, Vezyoloye, and Chervonoye. They may be trying to reach the eastern and northeastern outskirts of Gulyai-Pol to partially encircle it. The offensive direction is still uncertain, but the situation is interesting. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russian advance continues. New map updates were made today. Yesterday, Russian sources published footage showing several Russian soldiers raising flags, including unit banners in parts of Kamenskoye. Based on this footage, map changes followed. It now appears Ukraine still holds the northern part. Everyone expected a statement from the Ministry of Defense, but they remained silent about ground gains, although the offensive is clearly ongoing. The final neighborhood is likely being cleared, and soon both the Ministry of Defense and the Dnipro Force Group may issue statements. Meanwhile, Russian forces are advancing northeast of Kamenskoye along forest lines, aiming to align the front between Malyi Sherbaki, Stepovoye, and Kamenskoye, and further west toward Plavny, where they are also actively advancing. In the past 24 hours, cartographers recorded minor updates. Aviation and artillery are targeting Plavny. Heavy fighting is underway, but progress continues despite difficulties. And that's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and all the best to you.